Hey everyone, I am MSK, aka Master Swag King, coming at you guys today with another video. And if you guys are returning viewers or new viewers, then please consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it and comment down below. Also, make sure you guys hit the notification bell. That way you guys can get notified on whenever I upload a brand new video. And in today's video, we are going to be doing a comic book review on The Amazing Spider-Man World Without Love Volume 1. So, you guys already know this if you actually watched my recent channel update video, and that is the same video that I am going to be using as the channel trailer for the homepage for the channel, is that I am going to be doing more consistent content in a shorter time frame. And I also explained in that video that I am going to be doing more comic book reviews in 2025. So I thought there would be no better way than to kick off 2025 than to review Zebb Wells and John Romita Jr.'s controversial run on Spider-Man. So I am also going to be doing this with Tom King and Batman for the DC Rebirth era for Tom King's run on Batman. So if you guys actually don't know this about me, even though my very first superhero that I ever saw in my entire life was Batman, it was actually Spider-Man where I saw the first live action superhero movie, and he was the only character I had growing up where I actually had his comic books actually. So back in the day, my mom had a newspaper subscription and we would get comic books every Friday actually, back in the day when Spider-Man 3 had literally just came out in movie theaters at that moment in time. And then the year before that, in 2006, I actually got a Spider-Man encyclopedia. It was all of the information on his villains at that current moment in time. And then months later, I went to the library and checked out an entire bigger encyclopedia on Spider-Man. So literally from getting that first Marvel encyclopedia based around Spider-Man, that kind of, thrusted myself into the journey that is comic books actually. And keep in mind, he was the only character I ever had comic books around because you guys, as I mentioned in my previous videos, I don't actually have a comic book shop around me. I have to literally drive out or I have to order comic books online. And recently, Zebb Wells and John Romita Jr.'s run on Spider-Man has ended. They are doing this 8 Deaths of Spider-Man with Joe Kelly and another writer. And then after that, they are going to be rebooting Spider-Man to a #1 issue with the Amazing Spider-Man series, actually. I did end up reading Ultimate Spider-Man #1, written by Jonathan Hickman. I thought that was actually really, really good, but I actually didn't read anything past issue #1, and I have it in trade. So I'll be reviewing that very, very soon. Before that, I have to review the Ultimate Invasion trade and the one-shot before that because I want to do things in order as much as I can. And I know I can't really do that with everything, but if I'm going to do things in order, it's going to be okay, this is where Zebb Wells' run starts, and then we're just going to basically read and review all the books up until the end of it. That's the best way I can do it, actually, if you guys want a reading order, So a lot of people have a lot of things to say about Zebb Wells' writing on Spider-Man. Now, keep in mind, even though I love Spider-Man and I have read comics from his way back in the day, I've only really read a few comics, and I've been mostly involved with watching the movies, the animated movies based around Miles Morales, and the live action movies between Tobey, Andrew, and Tom, right? So Spider-Man comics, for me, I haven't really read one since the first time he interacted with Electro. That was the last Spider-Man comic that I read. It was a long time ago, and it was part 2 of that first time that you see Electro. So you guys know this. If I actually like a book, I'm just going to tell you I like it. Or if I don't like it, I'll give you that reason. Or if I'm kind of iffy on it, then I'll give you the reasons that I'm iffy on it. So I'm going to be completely honest here. I actually enjoyed the book. I'm going to be completely honest here with you guys. It was actually not that bad. Now, that's not to say that, the later trade paperbacks in this run are going to be obviously as good as this one. That's obviously probably not going to be the case, or maybe is the case. I don't know yet. I have to read them. But if if you're asking me and you're just going off of this first book, The Amazing Spider-Man World Without Love, Volume 1 by Zebb Wells and John Romita Jr., it's not that bad, actually. So there is a lot to actually explain with this book overall. So even though I liked it and I didn't hate reading this, actually, there is some stuff here that I did not like, actually. And it mostly boils down to how Zebb Wells treated Peter in this book, and just judging off of the small interaction that I had when reading this and kind of gauging where Peter Parker was going to go, well, it's probably not going to look so good for Peter the more this run continues as I read it, right? So given the fact that there is a lot to actually explain with this book, let's get right into it, okay? So we're going to start here. So the book essentially starts off with, Peter somewhere in Pennsylvania, and he's yelling, and then it just goes to like 6 months later. Yeah, I don't know if that has any implications later on in this run, but that was just completely random. That's another gripe I had. This was literally irrelevant as you read the book. It basically just has no reason being here. I'm going to be completely honest here. Don't know why this is here. It's just a waste of paper, honestly. But nevertheless, we get a time jump. Peter is talking to Aunt May, and it looks like that he wants to tell her that he's Spider-Man. That's kind of like how I gauge it, actually. But he doesn't end up telling her anything at all. She just gets mad at him because she just doesn't like when he lies. And as you guys know, typically with Peter Parker, he is like always behind on paying his bills. This is even an apparent thing in the video games as well. Like even in the Insomniac PS4 Spider-Man game, he had his shit like taken away from him and he got kicked out of his apartment because he just isn't paying the bills, right? So this bill collector appears literally all throughout the book, actually, trying to collect some money from him. But Peter actually isn't the guy that pays him. And you're going to be like, MSK, what are you talking about? Oh, don't worry. I'll tell you later. So one of the other bigger gripes that I have with Peter's depiction in this book is that he kind of treats people just like with apathy. He doesn't treat them very well. And it's like most Peter Parkers in most iteration, whether it's comic books, whether it's movies, whether it's video games, decently, like he treats people very well. Like he's the guy that is the underdog, can't get it right kind of guy. But in this one, Spider-Man was actually treated good to a certain extent. Peter was just treated like, why is he treating people like this? Okay. So he has this friend named Randy, and he kind of doesn't treat him very well at the beginning part of the book. Later on in the book, it's revealed that Randy wants to eventually ask his longtime girlfriend to get married. So we'll get into that later on. So the main villain of this book is actually a Spider-Man villain known as Tombstone. You guys would know him if you actually played the Spider-Man PS4 Insomniac game. He had a decent little mini mission, a side mission in that game. So the main villains are obviously Tombstone and Hammerhead, and there's two gangs, right? So you have two gang factions going on, both vying for control over this territory. Then you have obviously a henchman villain of Hammerheads, which is Digger, actually. And then they're obviously talking about selling an item to one another and kind of gaining traction on like, okay, which turf do you get? Which turf do I get? You can tell the tension is very, very high at this point in the book. Then after that, Tombstone, obviously he leaves the meeting, and then they all kind of go like, okay, because you can kind of tell from the villains' interactions that they are trying to betray each other. They say they want to work together and, make this kind of gang affiliated thing they're doing bigger together. But you can tell, like this happens with a lot of villains, they don't actually like are telling the truth. They lie to each other, and they're just gonna end up backstabbing each other later on in the book anyway. Well, I'll get to that later. So then Human Torch appears, and then Human Torch is like, hey, Peter, what's been going on, dude? And Peter's like, I need your help. And then, Human Torch is like, we're not like, what's been going on with you, So Human Torch wanted to talk to Peter. Peter ends up leaving. So remember how I told you about Randy? So Randy, the black guy, who's like Peter's friend in this book, Randy's girlfriend is Tombstone's daughter. So you can already see what kind of like conflict that's going to bring up later on. Okay, so at this point in the book, it's not that bad. I just don't like Peter Parker's depiction. I think he's just been a complete asshole to people for just no reason at all. But when Peter finally suits up as Spider-Man, he's actually more lively. He's saying a lot more jokes, and you know, there's some little bit of humanity in there for Tombstone. And then after that, Peter ends up apprehending a deal that's going on between basically Tombstone's gang and another gang, actually. One of the gangs wanted to buy Green Goblin's glider. You see Peter there. Peter ends up having a scuffle with Digger, the villain that you saw earlier in the book. And then after that, Peter ends up, you know, saving one of these guys actually from the car exploding. So you see that. And this part right here where he grabs one of the henchmen out of a burning vehicle, that's going to play in later into the book. Then Peter tries to figure out, okay, what's been going on with all of this stuff. He's having these like weird delays with himself for some reason. And then after that, Peter ends up calling Mary Jane. So my biggest problem with the book, even though I didn't hate reading it, I thought it was just kind of fine in my opinion. I actually enjoyed it. If you're asking me, like, did I enjoy my experience reading it? Because later on, you're going to see this. So I'll just explain the Mary Jane stuff as I keep going through the pages, and then I'll explain the Tombstone stuff. Okay, so Mary Jane is married in this book. She is dating somebody else. Then Mary Jane is not only married, dating somebody else, she has kids with that person. Why in the world is Zebb Wells writing the fact that Peter is trying to message a married woman? Keep in mind, a married woman here. Like, what would he do with her? Like, he would be just breaking up a marriage. Like, that's like kind of fucked up. That's pretty bad. Why is that written here? Have him just date another girl. Have him date, like, I don't know if Felicia Hardy's alive in this timeline at this point in Marvel Comics. This shit is all crazy with them. Black Cat's in the book. Have her, like, date him. You know? Like, that was the one thing that I absolutely just straight up despise. Like, why is this single dude calling this married woman, trying to ruin her marriage? What in the world going on there? Then they have, so later on in the book, the guy that she's married to, or I guess dating, I don't know, right? He goes to Peter's apartment because he sees that his girl is being a fucking, is like, he sees another guy obviously texting his girl. So he goes to Peter's house, right? And then Peter, and is obviously not there at the moment. And then who's only there is the bill collector. Then for some reason, Zebb Wells wrote that Peter's ex's boyfriend ends up paying a part of his bill. That was just so weird. So completely weird. Absolutely just one of the weirdest, cuckest interaction I've seen with a dude in forever. If I see a dude texting my girl and I go to his house to confront him and he's like behind on his bills or some shit, I ain't paying his bills. What the? I never seen something so stupid in my entire life. Holy fucking shit. Was that so cringe to see? So as we get to this part, Tombstone, well, most people know this about most Spider-Man continuity. Most people know that Peter takes pictures of Spider-Man. You guys that kind of whole gimmick, that's in this book too. So Tombstone knows that Peter takes pictures of Spider-Man. So he ends up confronting Peter and telling him, hey, make sure Spider-Man kind of stays out of my business, you know, kind of thing, right? But as you guys know, that's not what Peter can do because Peter always has to go and fight villains. That's his thing. Later on, Norman Osborn comes over, and it's nothing villain-like. He just wants Peter to watch his kids. That's literally it. So then later on, Tombstone's daughter comes over, and she's happy about who she's dating, and they have a little bit of a conversation. And then after that, he's trying to convince her that he's not this bad guy anymore because apparently Tombstone is, like, running a gang, but he simply is trying to convince his daughter he's not a bad guy, so there's a direct conflict there, which isn't really bad. I think villains go through that sometimes. Do I like it all the time? No, it just depends on how it's actually depicted, right? So then, obviously, Spider-Man breaks in, trying to figure out what happens, trying to figure out, okay, where's Tombstone at? He ends up webbing them up. They end up letting him know what Tombstone's going to do. After that, Tombstone ends up filing his teeth, because you guys know one of the deadliest thing about Tombstone is obviously his teeth. He can easily just bite someone and actually almost kill them. Peter ends up finding Tombstone's location. They end up getting into a scuffle, and Peter ends up losing it, and then Peter ends up getting captured, okay? So at this point in the book, you're probably thinking to yourself, like, is Peter dead? No. Tombstone ends up beating Peter, chaining him up from he basically has him bent over, as you can see right here, chaining up his arms, his legs chained up, basically just torturing him, beating him up. Like, it was pretty intense. Like, this part of the book was very, very good. Very intense. Very, like, gritty. Very, like, damn, man, Peter was getting his ass handed to him right here, right? So then, okay, so then the other part kicks in right now, the other act of the book. So Tombstone ends up basically telling Peter that he is going to unleash his gang on the streets of New York dressed like the other gang. So that would entail that there's a gang war going on. But before that, Randy ends up like proposing to like his girlfriend, kinda, and then she's like, Randy, do you want to marry me? It's just super cringe, right? So then after that, Tombstone, ends up leaving actually. And hold on. Oh, whoa! Almost hit the camera right there. Okay, so yeah, I'll mention that later because that's very, very important. Okay, so Tombstone leaves Spider-Man, gives him ultimatums, and says, "Hey, he basically punks his ass, saying, I rule this town now." Then you get a backstory based around Tombstone. Basically, he was picked on for his pale skin. At some point, he didn't want to get picked on anymore. He basically filed his teeth and then essentially grossly bites one of the bullies' ear. Oh, God, it's so gross. So gross. The backstory on this guy is just super crazy, right? Now he's just some sort of big gang leader. So then after that, he orders his men to obviously kill Spider-Man. And so Spider-Man doesn't want to have this gang war go on. And then after that, we have Black Cat visiting Mary Jane. And I think Peter Parker should just be with Mary Jane. Idealistically, yes, he should be with Mary Jane. But I don't want Peter going after Mary Jane if she's like with kids, like with another boyfriend or a husband or whatever. Have Peter with like Black Cat. I think, in my opinion, Black Cat suits him better because she kind of gets what Peter's going through. Mary Jane just kind of doesn't. But, it's up to you if you like whoever. I'm Team Black Cat. So Black Cat has this interaction with Mary Jane. And then after that, you get to the point where the guy that Peter saved earlier in the book from the burning car attempts to save him. And then after that, Peter ends up, the guy that he saved earlier breaks him out of the chains. Peter ends up, free. And then you have the other villains in their position under this building. Now, this is where the big twist comes in. So Peter ends up basically mauling through the entire gang to stop them from going out to the streets of New York to obviously cause a big gang war. So Peter just goes through all of them. And this is a great action scene. He just mauls through every single gang member. Absolutely just 100% just destroys them. And then after that, it is revealed that Tombstone put Spider-Man in the rival gang's underground house, then ended up tricking him to take out all of the rival gang members, so that way he wouldn't have to do it himself, which would cause a gang war, and then Spider-Man took them out for him. Pretty cool twist, right? I was like, okay, that's not that bad. Okay. So not only did he beat Spider-Man and manipulated him, because Spider-Man was under so much duress, also because he had said that he was going to kill, his daughter's boyfriend, and Peter would know that guy because that's Randy. So not only did Tombstone say, hey, I'm going to go kill my daughter's boyfriend, who is Randy, he also got Peter to take out all the other rival gang members. Tombstone was an awesome villain in this book. Actually, I didn't mind it, whatsoever. So now we're at the point where Tombstone ended up winning that war against the other gang because Peter ended up taking out all the members by himself. But then that does kind of secretly mean that are Spider-Man and Tombstone partners? Not really. It's really just based off circumstance at that point, right? So Peter, all bloodied and bruised, has another conversation with Black Cat. And then after that, Peter ends up going after Digger, once again, who was also a side villain in this story as well. Peter ends up confronting Tombstone once again. Peter knows that he tricked him, obviously. And then after that, Peter ends up going back home to Aunt May because at the beginning part of the book, Aunt May noticed that anytime Peter is invited to anything, he doesn't really go. And Peter is now going to attempt to try to, make it to more of the things that, Aunt May wants him to go to, actually, So he even offers to take her out for dinner, which is pretty cute, actually. Going from how the relationship was at the beginning to where it's at now, it's not that bad. So that right there, concludes The Amazing Spider-Man World Without Love, Volume 1. There is definitely no love here for Peter Parker at all, right? Then, obviously toward the end of the book, they show you all the variant covers from issue 1 and all that stuff. So then after that, we get the rest of the, variant covers, and then that pretty much ends it with, an ad back here of, where to start the Jed MacKay run for Black Cat, which, I may read and review at some point, or I'll just probably buy the omnibuses, actually. So how did I feel about The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, World Without Love? So overall, I didn't hate the book. I did really, really like the pacing of it. I really enjoyed how Spider-Man was getting, more and more and more involved with the criminal underworld as far as like taking down crime, because he really has a sense of being Spider-Man here. He does. He has the point where like he wants to actively take down criminals. So that's a good sense right there. It's a good for the hero that is Spider-Man to have that, but you had to have a villain like Tombstone kind of balance out like, okay, sometimes Peter just goes into a situation and he just doesn't think. And he didn't think the best when trying to obviously go after Tombstone. He didn't, because he ended up just getting beaten up. He ended up losing, and he ended up basically doing what the villain wanted, right? And you end up getting to this point in the book where you're like, I thought Tombstone overall was a really good villain to start out with. It's not a super popular Spider-Man villain by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought the depiction of him here, at least in this first volume, was overall pretty good, So the other thing that I'm going to bring up that I really, really just disliked entirely was the way Peter was trying to, talk to Mary Jane, even though she already has 2 kids. It's like, bro, you got to just move on at that point. Why Zebb Wells wrote it that way, I have no clue. But at that point, like, why would Peter want to break up a happy family? Like, what the fuck? Just have him with Black Cat. She got a fucking nice hairy ass pussy. You could just lick that shit forever. And I would definitely fuck me some Black Cat. You guys know me. I love me to white girls. And I will say this too. I know a lot of people have like issues with John Romita Jr. for like his artwork. I thought the art was fine. I enjoyed the art in the book. The art in the book looks great. Looks fantastic, honestly, to me. I just, hope that in the other volumes in this series, because this is like the beginning of Zebb Wells' run on The Amazing obviously Spider-Man, I just hope Peter Parker, for his human persona, like his, for that, is a lot more better depicted. That's like my biggest gripe, because it felt like he was just kind of going with the flow this book. Like when with Spider-Man, it was way different, obviously. So that's just the best way of describing my issues and my praises for this book. Is this basically a good first book to read if you haven't read a lot of Spider-Man comics. I would say this. If you haven't read a lot of Spider-Man comics, like myself, I think it's very good. But if you're someone that's been reading Spider-Man comics forever, this is probably not going to be your cup of tea. But then again, like I always say, always kind of do this when it comes to movies and television, anime, and comic books. Read stuff and watch it for yourself, and then you make the decision on if you liked it or if you didn't like it. Or maybe if you didn't like it initially, maybe later on you do like it because of things that you didn't know, and later on the things you discovered made you like it, or vice versa. Maybe you did like it initially, and then later on you were like, man, that really wasn't that good. Like I said before in the video, I thought the book was completely fine. You know, I liked the book overall. I just had my issues. Does it get any better than this? Well, I don't know. I'll have to read The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2 by Zebb Wells and John Romita Jr. to find out. So the next book that I am going to be reviewing like this will be Batman, written by Tom King. That's going to be the DC Rebirth Batman. And then, you know, I want to make sure I'm keeping up this level of consistent content, because as you guys know, that is my goal for this year. So I thought I started off with one of my favorite superheroes of all time. And yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the read. It was a fine read, actually, you know, just a few things that I would tweak here and there. Also, I do like it when writers can utilize not super known villains and make them a big threat. I do like that a lot, because, you know, that's not always easy, because it's easier with Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Electro, Venom. It's a lot easier with those guys. But with a character like Tombstone, it can be a little bit harder. I know Tombstone's had like that rivalry with that one guy in the comic books for a very, very long time, but the way that he depicted Tombstone here was actually really, really good. So yeah. So thank you guys for checking out this video. If you guys are returning viewers or new viewers, then please consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and comment down below. Also, make sure you guys hit the notification bell. That way you guys can get notified on whenever I upload a brand new video. I am MSK, aka Master Swag King, and I'm signing out, guys. See you guys later. Deuces. Peace.